Let's get into this morning. So, I was thinking about it. One of the fundamental principles we teach in Kabbalah 1 is the similarity of every human being. Every person ultimately has one thing that's the same as every other human being on earth. We're all created by God to want total and absolute fulfillment. That's it. That's the one common factor in every human being. The way we go about it, the things we do, the talents and abilities that we've been given, etc., are unique to each and every one of us. But every single person on earth wants the same thing, total and absolute fulfillment. So in order to do that, we need to plug in to the endless world, to the light of the Creator. And that's what I want to talk about today. How are we going to do that? And it comes in a very interesting way that I'm sure for many of us is a brand new understanding from Kabbalah. And it comes out of the Bible. But before I tell you what the story is, I want to just remind some of you, or for those of you who are new, the Kabbalists teach us that the 5 books of Moses, we do believe it is a true history and chronology. But it's not limited to history. Because like so many things in life, if it's just a historical event, what does it do for me today? But as they say, the Bible is a holy book. And if it's holy, there has to be something more than just the recorded history. And what the Kabbalists give us in the Zohar, which is the main writings of Kabbalah, is an understanding of the depth of wisdom that's hidden or encoded inside the 5 books of Moses, that's eternal wisdom. So yes, we can read stories about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or different people in the Bible, and we can say that's great. They were righteous people. They were wonderful. Look at all the things they did. Even look at their frailties. But so what? That's like thinking about how many of you have ever met your great-great-grandparents? Exactly. But in a certain way, we're here because of them. But that doesn't mean because they existed and they did what they did, we are who we are. Not necessarily. So then the same thing, if we're reading the Bible just as history, the Zohar says you're very limited. And what the Zohar gives us is the eternal understanding for us today, 2016. So here comes the story. The Bible talks about lepers and leprosy. Okay, just checking. We don't see it today. Okay, there may be skin diseases and things, but leprosy or lepers, that's something of ancient times. So what was a leper? A leper was somebody who had a skin disease. They were brought to the Kohen, he was called, the spiritual leader, a person who had spiritual insight, who could see what was going on with the person internally, not just externally. And the Kohen was given the responsibility to diagnose whatever the skin marking was, to see was it truly leprosy or not. And if it was leprosy, then the person had to be quarantined outside of the camp, right? Away from the millions and millions of people that were there with him. Had to be quarantined outside until he was purified. Great. What does it have to do with us? We don't have leprosy today. We have a lot of medicine. We have doctors. We have science, right? Preventing a lot of that. But when you go to the Zohar, again, which is like the sole understanding of the Bible, it tells us that a leper, what's called metzorah, came from the words motzi shem ra. I see you all understand that. Motzi shem ra means somebody who speaks badly about others. So the Zohar is now telling us something that my teacher, Rav Berg, explained when it was big in the news. You remember back a number of years when airborne disease first came out, right? Wow, everything was airborne disease, airborne disease, airborne disease. And the Rav used to tell us simple, airborne disease is just people speaking badly. What's an airborne disease? Somebody putting negativity into the cosmos, and now it becomes trouble, it becomes an ailment. So Motzi Shem Ra, speaking bad about others, according to the Zohar, is what caused people to have leprosy and therefore be isolated outside of the camp, to be away from other people. Now it starts to make a little more sense to us because some of us, in various times, don't say the best things about other people, do we? Every now and then, bad things come out of our mouth. So I don't want you to be paranoid, like, uh-oh, leprosy is going to happen. But we need to understand, what is it teaching us for today? And this, I think, is one of the most powerful and hopefully new things that we will understand this morning. According to the Zohar, according to the Kabbalists, we don't have an individual connection to God. Just want that to sink in for a second. Because most people think, if I just go home and before I sleep or when I wake up in the morning, I pray to God and I ask God for things, or I, tell God how much I love Him and all of that, that's my connection to God. Then I go out in the world and I do what I do. And the Kabbalists say no. Now, don't misconstrue it to think that means we don't have a personal connection. Because yes, when we pray, when we scan, when we meditate, we can feel a personal connection to the Creator. We can feel a certain level of one-on-one. But let's go back for a minute and think. If we are all one being, if we were created in the endless world by one God, the Kabbalists call it we are created as one soul. In other words, all the billions of people on the planet have a soul that comes from God. In the endless world, endless meaning there's no limitation, there's no illusion, there's no separation. In the endless world, we were all one. There was one huge infinite soul that received its blessings from the Creator, what's called the light of God, which is the source of absolute and total fulfillment. That vessel, that soul was filled with it. Within that infinite vessel is the potential for all the billions of people in this world. So now, let's follow the pattern. When we came into the world and we broke up into billions of people, what happened to that soul? The soul got, from our point of view, fragmented into billions of people. Right? So I have a soul, you have a soul, we all have a soul, the rest of the people on the planet have a soul. But the thing that we want to keep in our mind to our benefit is the divisiveness of physical bodies did not create divisiveness on a spiritual level. We are still one unified soul. We are still connected to every single human being on earth on a spiritual level. Our soul and their soul is still filled with the light of the Creator and still receiving and channeling that light. So when we say that the Kabbalists teach that we don't have an individual connection, it doesn't mean we don't have that personal connection, but it's one, let's say one conduit of billions of conduits that come to us that can bring us our blessings, that can bring us our light, that can bring us peace and serenity. So when a person's not feeling joy and happiness and complete fulfillment and serenity, it means that we're not drawing through all the people around us our light. Because everyday light is coming out of the endless world through every human being on earth to us. How can I show you? Let's look at it another way. How many of you have ever been hurt by somebody? How many of you have ever felt guilt over hurting somebody else? Does it feel good? No. So then what is it showing us? In that moment of that experience, whether they were hurting us or we were hurting them, we were not drawing the light of the Creator through that conduit, through that person. And therefore we disconnected from that light force of God. So what happens when you're vacuuming and you pull the vacuum too far and the plug comes out of the electricity? Does the vacuum still continue because it was running for the last 20 minutes? No, it stops. So when we unplug ourselves from other people, then we also lose that connection, and that's why we feel bad. So then it means that the light we can draw is very, very dependent on how we perceive and how we interact with other people. And it's not up to them. That's the beauty. It's up to us. Because they may be doing negative things, but they still have that pure light of God inside their soul. And if we make the effort to connect to the light of the Creator in them and draw our light through them, then in spite of themselves, we're still getting blessing. In spite of what they do, we're still feeling the light of the Creator, And we still have a raising of our consciousness and our awareness and all the good blessings that we could ever imagine the Creator's giving us, because they're drawn through all our connections to other people. It's not drawn just individually. And that's a very, very important thing. That's why it says about the leper. The leper was isolated, quarantined away from people. Why? Because that's what they had done. They separated themselves from people, and therefore they were put separate until they could change. They were isolated. And it's funny, I was thinking about it this morning. We have a teacher, most of the teachers in the center are not American. So this one of the teachers, Israeli teacher, whose English is good enough, but you'll hear here in a second. He was talking to a student, and he was saying to her, he says, said something about how you isolate yourself from your family, from your friends or something, and he says, because you're cold. Like isolate, the word ice. You're cold like ice. Isolate. So, okay, it's not quite the same, but it sure makes sense. I mean, when would a person isolate themselves from others? Is when they feel either are being cold to them, and it's for all the right reasons. Maybe we've been hurt in the past, so we carry that hurt with us. And we don't want to be hurt again, so what do? If we perceive somebody who looks like or acts like the person who hurt us back then, do we naturally feel like embracing them, or do we naturally feel like isolating ourselves from them? We naturally want to isolate. And that's the idea. So it's not that we're cold per se, although we may be at certain times, but we will isolate ourselves. And the Aramaic word for leprosy, segura, is also to isolate or to be closed off. So many times when we felt hurt, when things have happened to us that are not pleasant, we do close ourselves off. What's the first thing we do? Anything that happens that doesn't make us feel good, the first thing we want to do is move away. Move away, leave them alone, push them out, go away, run away, something. We tend to isolate ourselves. Well, too much of it will be like leprosy. So it may not be a physical disease that people can see, but how many times, or maybe there are people in your life that that will tend to always be standoffish. They will not get involved in the social group. They'll not talk with their family. You have these big family gatherings, and they'll be the one in the corner just kind of keeping to themselves. Everybody else is chatting, talking, getting along, partying, whatever it is, and they're kind of off by themselves. And it doesn't make them a bad person. But the sad part is they've cut themselves off. And they've cut themselves off from the light of the Creator and all the blessings. So they may run and say, please God, give me this and help me with this and do this and this. But you know what? That's why we are put around other people. Because the Creator is pointing out to us that our blessings, our light, all our goodness will come through those people as we draw it. And again, the beauty is, in spite of that person, we can draw it. Because all we have to do is think of their soul. No matter how negative we may act or other people may act, their soul is still pure and perfect. Their soul is still interconnected with us. So as long as we contact their soul, we're deriving the light for the blessings we're looking for in life. But the moment we cut ourselves off, we cut ourselves off. It's not just them. They've already cut themselves off. You know what my parents used to tell me? I grew up in California, so we didn't have snow. So they couldn't tell us anything about the snow. But what they say is, the pier, because I grew up by the ocean. If your friend jumped off the pier, would you follow and jump off with them? Right? Some people told me in the East Coast, it was like if they jumped out the window. Right? Would you follow them the same way? So just because the other person who's misbehaving cut themselves off from the light of the Creator through other people from their point of view, shouldn't mean that we have to cut ourselves off from our light of the Creator that's drawn through them. Because the light is always available. It never disappears. Give you a story. Somebody that I know, imagine this, 20 years old, and was told by one of his parents that he was born, him and his sister, they were conceived in order to help fix the marriage. The marriage was on the rocks, and they thought by having kids, maybe it would be the glue to bring them together. So what did this young man hear? He wasn't wanted. Right? It wasn't like his parents told him, we wanted another child, and therefore we had you and your sister. But it's, you know what? You and your sister were conceived to try and fix the marriage. So now imagine at 20, for the next 20 years, what's in the head of that person, consciously or unconsciously? Not wanted, not wanted, not wanted. So then you tell me, somebody who had that kind of traumatic experience, would he isolate himself? And unconsciously, just feel a little, anything that didn't go his way, kind of standoffish. Oh, see, another group that doesn't want me, another person doesn't want me, another relationship doesn't want me, etc. And it took years in the center, understanding Kabbalistic technology and working hard at it to start removing those blockages. To understand it's not about whether they wanted him or not, but he had an opportunity in this world to decide, would he stay leprous? Would he stay isolated? Would he continue to think that people didn't want him just because they may have said or acted in a certain way? Or would he say, no, like we were talking this morning, my connection to the light of the Creator depends on my actions and my consciousness. So I want to make an effort to see through that. I don't want to give in to the thought that I may not be wanted or they might not like me. So what? I can still draw light. I can still have blessings. And if nothing else, I know I'm wanted by the Creator. And therefore, I can find people that I can join in that will want me also. So it's not about what they do, it's about what I do. So then we want to start healing our leprosy. We need to be like Moses. We need to be sensitive and aware of other people. They say Kabbalistically that Moses was equal to every human being on earth. So imagine, even at the time of Moses, there were millions and millions of people on the planet. And not everybody knew Moses. So what does it mean that Moses was equivalent to all those people? He was equal to them. And the Zohar says, because he was sensitive and he cared about the pain and the needs of others. And that's what made him equal to everybody. I mean, think about it. Who are the people that we feel the closest to? The people who truly love us and care for us and concerned about us, and they call us up when we're not well, or we call them when they're not well, etc. When you feel that care and concern, don't you feel close? And that makes us equal. That makes us one. And so Moses was of that nature. And that's our work, to feel more sensitive and more caring about other people. They may be going through pain. Did Moses care? If you read the commentaries, even if you read just the literal story of the Bible, 40 years Moses leading these millions of people through the desert, and on a constant basis, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of them, complaining about him. He took them out of slavery and bondage from Egypt. He took them through the desert and led them to the promised land, and they could still speak bad about him. But what was Moses' strength? Because he was sensitive to those people, he knew that they had been hurt in some way, shape, or form, and that's why they were doing what they were doing. So he was able to look at them and say, you know what? That's just who they are. Why should I be upset with them? Because that's how they're going to behave. Right now, that's their level of consciousness. Why should I expect them to change? And therefore, he was able to draw light through everybody and not be affected by their negativity. Think what would happen. What would happen if today you, right now, whoever you feel is hurting you, or whatever situation even in the past has hurt you, what would happen if right now you could say, you know what? That's who they were. Let me help them and draw light through them rather than be hurt by them and isolated from my connection to the light of the Creator. That for me has become motivation. You can't disconnect me from the light of the Creator. Only I can do that. But you can help me connect to the light of the Creator. Because as I see you, as I interact with you, as I think about you, I can connect through you and draw light through you. So my individual connection may be one aspect, but my connection to the greater community, that's what really determines how much blessing I have or we have. And so we're here this morning to start shifting our consciousness, start looking at things differently. Because again, what they did, and nobody's saying they didn't do that nasty thing, They didn't say whatever they said. But it's still up to us. It's our choice. Because somebody uses whatever, a car or alcohol or drugs or whatever you want to say in a negative way, doesn't mean we have to do the same. We can decide to use things in a positive way. So how much more resource could we have than everybody on the planet? Imagine suddenly we just took our connection away from 3, 4, 5, 10, maybe even 100 people, our connection to God, to 7 billion. How many of you are in sales? Would love to sell whatever your widget is to 7 billion people? Wouldn't it be great? Yeah, exactly. Okay, right now I'm selling to whatever, a few hundred, 1,000, 10,000. But if I could sell to 7 billion, how much greater my profit, my benefit? So here we are this morning learning that if I want to connect to all the light and the blessing the Creator gave me, all I have to do is draw it through all billion people, 7 billion people on the planet. Just draw it through them. And how do I do it? Thought. Just think about it. We have a story from the Bible. We'll go back to the Bible. Jacob, one of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob had a brother that hated his guts, wanted to kill him. Think you could draw light through a murderer? Doesn't sound like it, but Jacob taught us we can. Jacob sent his brother Esau so much light, felt the pain of Esau's soul for being blocked, and was able to reach in and awaken so much light that when they finally met, the Zohar says, in spite of Esau wanting to kill Jacob, all he could do is hug him and kiss him. And Jacob was able to draw blessings in his life through the evil Esau. So when people say, what are we going to do with all the hateful people in the world? What are we going to do with all the negative people? Well, let's start drawing light through them. If we can draw our light and our blessing through them, think of what's going to be channeling through them. Through them is going to come the light of God. Greater love, kindness, compassion, greater forgiveness, greater tolerance. All the good. And as that's drawn through them, what do you think they're going to feel? They're going to feel those things. Forgiveness, tolerance, love, light, and blessing. And the more we can draw through them those light and blessing, then you're going to start changing them. Because as we awaken the soul, then they're going to begin to convert from the negative to the positive. Because if you're thinking now in these terms, the bigger the negativity is, the more we see darkness and negativity through people, what does it mean about the light? The light is equally as big. All we have to do is transform it. So as you and I will work together and we will bring more light through people, one, because we want it. I want all the blessings the Creator set out for me. So I can only get it through you, through people in the world. So then I have motivation to draw light through you. The beauty of that is that you get more light because I'm drawing it through you. You're drawing it through me. I get more. We're drawing it through all the people on the planet. They all get more. The bottom line of every spirituality, every religion on earth, on the simple teaching level, what is it? The one common factor? Love your neighbor as yourself. We're all taught to strive for that. But now you understand it in a new way. It's not just a nice thing. You know what? We're going to be nice, moral, and ethical people, and we're going to make an effort to love everybody, etc., like it's altruism. It's not altruism. What we're understanding this morning that's so deep and so powerful that I encourage you to keep thinking about it over and over and over again is that everybody else on this planet is you. They are me. We are everybody. So when it says love your neighbor as yourself, it's because in truth they are. They are you and me. Because our blessings that the Creator gave us in the endless world is dependent on how we draw it through them. And therefore it's to my benefit to love my neighbor as myself, to feel the pain of others, to draw light through them, to at least be kind and compassionate. And as I often say, it doesn't mean you have to invite everybody over to your house or go out to coffee with everybody. They can be at a distance, you can still draw light through them. That's okay, but you've got to draw light through them for you and for them. I have a student that just told me 2 weeks ago. She was telling me about a lifelong difficulty with her mother. Not that any of us have things like that. The mother was always criticizing, was just annoying, berating, etc. So for years and years and years, isolated. Well, as her two sons grow up, they start to want to intervene between their mother and the grandmother, because they love their grandmother, they love their mother, but they see there's that separation. So the mother, fortunately, is learning here, and she is understanding like we're speaking this morning. You know what? Your mother may be annoying, but you've got to draw your light through her. You've got to, so that you won't be annoyed, send her light, wish her well. So for about 2 weeks, she's sending light, wishing her well, this and this. Then the son comes to visit, and of course, he wanted to see his grandmother. So, okay, the mother takes it to see the grandmother, and she's telling me, she's recounting this story to me. She says, you know, my mother was still doing the same thing. She was still just as annoying as always. But all of a sudden, I started to realize I wasn't annoyed. It didn't bother me anymore. And not only that, but when they got back in the car to go home, her son looked at her and said, "Who are you?" Because you realize the difference of what just happened? And then the next day or 2 days later, I forget what she told me, they were out again. They were going somewhere, and the son was just visiting for a few days. And she had the idea, you know what, we're going out to dinner, let's go get grandma. It's like all of her animosity just disappeared. Like Jacob sent so much light that she was getting blessing through her mother, even though the mother was still the same, but the daughter, my student, was in a different world. And of course we know that, don't we? You can have a conversation with somebody right in front of you, and the way they're talking, you say, wow, what world are you in? Like we're worlds apart, but they're standing right in front of you, so it doesn't have to be far apart. So the mother was in her annoyed, blocked, isolated, leprous, chaotic world, but the daughter was not. The daughter was in an all-inclusive environment. She was drawing light through the mother, through the son, through all the blockages. And so she felt good. And that's all we can ask for. We can't make other people change, but we can learn to draw light through other people. And if you go back to the idea of love your neighbor as yourself, now you understand why the Rav and Karen Berg, my teachers, created, starting 50 years ago, Kabbalah centers. Not for the sake just of teaching Kabbalah, but I think one of the most important things we have is spiritual community. Because we can say, yes, it's a nice concept. We'll draw light through all 7 billion people. But it's not easy for us to walk out and implement that. But if we create spiritual communities like we have here in the center, then at least we know like-minded people who want to grow, who want to be more kind and more compassionate and more loving, it's easier for us to draw light through them because they're all working for the same thing. Sure, is anybody in the center, in any center, going to be annoying now and then? Absolutely. All of us are going to be in some way, just because when we walk in, we may be still thinking about something that bothered us. So somebody may come up to us and say, oh, hi, Chaim. And maybe I'm not thinking about it. I'm still got something on my mind that's bothering me. So I may look like I'm not paying attention. But at least they know it's a loving environment. It's a spiritual community. And therefore I can still draw light. I don't have to take it personally from people here. I have 2 different students who have 2 different perspectives. Because, we're here every Sunday. Some of you have been part of the community, or hopefully will become more part of the community that we have. But I have 2 different students who've told me 2 different things. When they first came into the center, and they tried to enter into the community, they felt like other people were kind of standoffish. They weren't really inviting or warm or seem warm and friendly. The other students said, you know what? I walked in and I just wanted to make friends with everybody. Everybody was so nice and welcoming and warm. So I'm realizing to myself, what was the difference? Is the community different? The community is a community. We are who we are. The difference is what we bring from our past into it. So the one student who had certain isolating events growing up walked into this warm, loving community called the Kabbalah Center and still was able to feel some part, but also a little part separated. The other student who grew up a little more warm and friendly was able to just walk in and right away incorporate themselves into the community. So it's not about the community, it's about us. So if you happen to be one of those people who feel the isolation, today's the day to change it. The change is up to us. Whether we're leprous at this moment or not, it's up to us to purify ourselves. And that's why it says the leper was put outside the camp only until they were purified. And who helped them purify? The spiritual leader. their spirituality. So you and I, to whatever extent we may be isolated, today's the day we can decide not to be. Today's the day we can pick up and we can just say to ourselves, look, I don't want to let anybody else in this world stop my connection, stop me from plugging into the endless light of God, because I want all the light. I'm going to start working to speak good, see good, and look for good in people. I'm going to start awakening my consciousness to realize if they're not behaving well, it's not because the light of God doesn't exist in them. I can draw the light of God through them, and I can help awaken that light of God that was put inside them, so that they will also become more light-like. So as we're off today into our lives, let's start committing ourselves, not only just to see the good and look for the good and make an effort to speak good about people, but let's, like we affirm, let's start committing ourselves. If we believe our connection to blessings, to peace and harmony and fulfillment comes from the light of God, then let's start acting like God and love what God loves. Which person on earth does God not love? Which person was not created by God? So we want to start loving and caring for and seeing the light of God in everything that God created. And then acting more like God, like we affirm, with greater love and kindness and compassion towards all human beings. It doesn't just say through spiritual people. Here we can strengthen our connection to spirituality. Here we can strengthen our connection to learning how and exercising and training ourselves to draw the light of God through other people. Because as we will do that, and as we will join with all the people in the centers around the world, then heaven on earth doesn't stay just a nice religious traditional concept. But heaven on earth can and will become, in your life and in my life, a reality. God bless.